My daughter got a little dinner bell for her birthday. I should just bring that in. All right. Evening, everybody. Welcome to this regular monthly meeting of the Charlottesville Board of Architectural Review. Staff will introduce each item, followed by the applicant's presentation, which should not exceed 10 minutes. The chair will then ask for questions from the public, followed by questions from the BAR. After questions are closed, the chair will ask for comments from the public, and then the BAR. For each application, members of the public are allowed 3 minutes to ask questions and 3 minutes to offer comments. Speakers shall identify themselves and provide their address. We'd like to ask that they please step up to the podium. Comments should be limited to the BAR's purview, that is, regarding only the exterior aspects of a project. And then following the BAR's discussion and prior to taking action, the applicant will have up to 3 minutes to respond. All right. Our consent agenda, matters from the public not on the agenda or the consent agenda. Tonight's consent agenda just contains minutes from this past December and January. Are there any matters from the public to bring before the BAR? Anybody online?
No hands raised at the moment. If you'd like to speak this time, click the raise hand icon, or if you're joining us via telephone, press *9.
All right.
No hands raised at this time.
Thank you. All right, consent agenda. Did anyone have any items on the consent agenda wanted to discuss? I hear a motion to pass the consent agenda.
Move to approve the consent agenda consisting of the December and January BAR minutes.
Thank you, Ms. Lewis. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Bailey. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, consent agenda passes. No deferred items. Our first new item is 222 and 224 Court Square. Mr. Werner?
I'm going to pull this up to the screen, and then I will. Okay. Success. Please match mine. There we go. All right. Okay, good evening, everyone. Happy February. This is a COA request for, the address is 222, 224 Court Square. This is two adjoining office spaces. This is an 1830s building in Court Square. The request is to remove two wood doors, and I'll just quickly scroll. That's the door at 224, and that is the existing door at 222. All evidence, including photographs, records, documents, indicate these are not the original doors. They are certainly old, but they are not original to these openings. What is nice is both doors seem to still have the transoms and trims and frames that are described in earlier surveys, but the doors are not. The applicant is requesting to replace them both with a 6-panel door, or two 6-panel doors painted a dark black or green. And at first, just sort of trying to determine, do these doors indicate anything? Is there anything typical in Court Square? As I said, I don't think we know that. I think they're certain these are not original. I think they could be hung on a wall as art. Don't know where they came from, but I think the staff thinks it's fine to replace them, and with the 6 panels. There's no evidence that the hardware's historic, or I don't even know what an 1830 lock looks like. And so I'm very comfortable with the recommendation, and Dan, if you had anything you want to add, I have your images. I know in the meeting, I was asked somewhat about the applied trim. The raised panel sketch that you showed seemed fine, but I think that was the only thing that was outstanding. So if you've got any questions, or I have any questions for you, Dan? And would you please stand at the microphone so that everyone, then Patrick gets all the quotes right.
I don't have much to add. This is actually my office space that I lease. And we have a lot of wind coming through the door, so.
All right. Do we have any questions from the public? All right. Guessing none online.
Do you not see anything?
All right. Any questions from the BAR? All right. Any comments from the public? All right. And comments from the BAR?
You're our historian.
I have one.
Okay.
Jeff, if you could go to the, I guess I'll call it the shop drawing. So my only comment is we'd prefer it if you could remove that applied molding that's on the surface
Yep.
of the door itself.
Sure.
The integral panel molding to the style is fine.
Okay.
Otherwise, looks good.
Yeah, I mean, if you, these are going to end up being custom built. So like if you have a profile that you think is appropriate to the era and building, we'd be happy to replicate it. But yeah, we can
You'd have to
definitely
do
get rid of that
research
applied
to figure out
molding.
exactly which one to point you towards.
Yeah.
But essentially, the rail and style with the molding integral to the rail and style to hold the panel is appropriate.
Yeah.
The applied molding's not.
Sure.
So,
If I could offer to, in whatever you shape as a motion, having dealt a lot with doors in the past and oddball openings, whatever the door is sized for, that it's a lock is centered on the lock rail and also centered on the the style. I don't know the formal name, the lock style, so that it's not, so everything's centered appropriately. But
What do you mean? Like vertically, so,
both.
because it's going to have to be within 88-inch range.
Right, but what will happen is, so centered on the lock rail, be centered there,
So
but
that
then
needs
also
to be at 3 feet.
yeah. And so it doesn't end up with like a doorknob over here or over here. You know, try to, whatever you size, if it's gonna have to be custom, the rail and styles can be sized and dimensioned such that a lock set would be centered in there. And it's an aesthetic, but it does.
Just a curiosity question. Do you know why the two doors are different heights, or why the one is higher than the other?
My understanding is that the doors themselves are different designs because the current landlord replaced them maybe 20 years ago with like doors she had in a barn. That's, I think why the two doors are different now. I'm not totally clear on.
I can answer
the
that, actually.
openings are-
The steps going up to each used to be wood, and I don't know if they were, what had been there, and it may have also been a function of, well, I've got doors of these size, so that stoop was made to fit a door that someone found in a salvage yard. So, but I think that's the most likely answer, is that the stoops themselves are different than what was there, and that dictated the door height.
I mean, the two doors are also just different because they're not really, it's two different buildings.
Mhm.
So even the surrounding everything, and the transoms are probably two different houses at one point, or offices, or whatever it was.
I've got one more comment. I'm glad you specified unlacquered brass.
you show a square leaf hinge, I would say that that should be a must. That's not a round leaf on the hinges.
All right.
This is the same bill.
Yeah, but it probably was
Anyone like to make a motion?
at one point,
Oh, me too?
because the transoms.
All right. Having considered the standards set forth within the city code, including the ADC district design guidelines, I move to find that the proposed entrance alterations at 222 and 224 Court Square satisfy the BAR's criteria and are compatible with this property and the other properties in the ADC district, and that the BAR approves the request with the following conditions: that the applied panel molding shown in the shop drawings is removed, that the new lock set is centered on the lock rail and lock style such that it also conforms with ADA code, and that the hinges are true square butt hinges. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? No opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Bracy.
Thank you very much.
You can remove the sign from your window. I thought you were going to come out, somebody was going to come out the other night and was sticking it on. I slipped and almost put my, it was a rainy night, almost put my hand through your window. That would have been good. The trials and tribulations of my job. Okay, and then
So next we have a preliminary discussion for 1609 Gordon Avenue.
And I'm going to just quickly introduce this while waiting for Kevin's, there it is. No, it was there. Okay, hang on a second and share this and then give you my, here we go. So this is a preliminary discussion for a proposed new apartment building at 1609 Gordon Avenue. So it, you all will not take any action tonight, but as with other preliminary discussions, the goal here is to answer any questions the applicant might have, certainly get to any questions that you all might have. The idea being what is necessary to get towards a successful application. Not necessarily saying it guarantees an approval, but to get to where you all have the information you need to make a decision. This is within the Rugby Road, University Circle, Venable Neighborhood ADC District. The existing building was constructed in 1963. It is non-contributing. Therefore, it can be raised without BAR approval. However, anything new constructed on the site does require a COA. With anything that, for preliminary discussions, any project that has a projected construction cost in excess of $350,000 does require a review with the full BAR. If it's something less than that, we could have had a meeting with a couple of BAR members, but the fact of the cost, that kicks it into that mandatory review. Same thing with the next project coming up for Park Street. And I said, we've got in the staff report, I've taken what the guidelines typically recommend: heights, widths, setbacks, step backs, etc., massing scale, and some of the recommendations based on what the existing historic buildings nearby. This is the first project that you all are going to be looking at.
Jeff, you're muted.
Am I? Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. How's that? All right. This is the first project you all be looking at with the new ordinance I guess, adopted. So there are some conditions in the zoning that, relative to setback, step back heights, et cetera, widths, that you all have. I think, as we've always done, the BAR can make recommendations if to mitigate the height. But if you've got questions, we can go through that. We might have some questions that I have to go back and ask up the ladder. So if it seems I don't have the answer, my apologies, but we'll figure that out. And I was asked about, I referenced the zoning being RX3. There was, when council was approving the final map, this was an area that got changed. It was one of the late changes, and it was bumped to RX5. And I talked to Mr. Schaefer, and he's fine continuing with the assumption of or not the assumption of, but using the parameters of the RX3 in their design here. So I know that might be subject to change. Kevin, you can certainly discuss that, but just to make clear, the property is zoned RX5. And with that, I just hand it over to you, Mr. Zemer, and sort of have a conversation. Kevin, whatever page you want me to go to.
Yeah,
Have
certainly.
at it.
Thank you, Mr. Schaefer. Go ahead and present your project.
Good evening. My name is Kevin Schaefer. I'm the Charlottesville Studio Director for Design Develop. Thank you, Jeff, for that introduction. You covered about half of what I'm going to talk about, but so it's really helpful. This is, a brave new world in terms of the new zoning, and I think there's some BAR guidelines that we'll be navigating with zoning requirements as well, and so we are looking to be mindful and respectful of both, and I hope that we can illustrate tonight how we are being mindful of both. If you go to the next slide. As Jeff mentioned, the existing structure was built in 1963. I believe it's a triplex currently. It's student housing. It is not particularly handsome or significant, but also from a ownership perspective, it is it's getting to the point in its lifespan where either significant whole-scale renovation at significant cost is required, or there's an opportunity with the new zoning on the table to sort of put a foot in the ground and make an improvement on the site. The existing structure is not significant or contributing per the city's surveys, as Jeff mentioned. On the next slide. So we have these slides are all from your booklet too. The only thing we'll be presenting that's new is kind of an update to the site plan today. But this shows the maximum building footprint, which is 5,951 square feet. We have front setbacks that are required to be between 5 and 15 feet. And we have 0 lot lines on 0 side setbacks, 0 rear setbacks as well. From a building code perspective, it's not particularly beneficial to go all the way to the 0, side and rear yard. We need at least 3 feet from those property lines so that we can get windows in, so that we can get glazing in. And so it's not a 0 setback condition that we're going to be proposing. It's actually more like 3.5 feet on the side, 3.5 to 4 feet on the rear. And so what that does is that ends up bringing our building footprint down to 5,375 square feet. So about a 10% reduction from that kind of max building footprint. You can go to the next slide if you don't mind. Here's the proposed site plan, kind of hot off the presses this afternoon, which shows the side setbacks and the rear setback, and we do have a 5-foot alley setback on the side as well, which will require significant screening in the new zoning due to active interiors is, I think, the language that's used is required. And so we'll have some significant landscaping on the side of the parcel, as well as what's required on the front as well. If you could go to the next slide. From a massing perspective, though, here's just a diagram that shows those new setbacks on the site. So 3.5 feet. We are pushing up against our front setback. We're holding that 15-foot line. We're trying to be sympathetic of the context and keep in mind the ADCD guidelines about relating to the adjacent structures. So we can't, from a zoning perspective, go back any further. I will say, and maybe the next slide would be helpful at this point. Yeah, here we go. We do have a pretty significant front yard from our front of the parcel, like the front property line, to the street, which starts to make the front yard feel bigger than just the 15-foot maximum that we're allowed. The district itself has a wide variety of uses. Even you can just see from this aerial image here, there's many churches, many multifamily sorority and fraternity houses that are a wide variety of scales and a wide variety of styles as well. On the next page, you can see just some of our immediate adjacent context, which includes the Martha Jefferson House directly across the street. That's the First Church of Scientists, I believe. And on the next slide, you can see additional district context on Gordon Ave and 16th Street, all of which has some fairly significant footprints associated with it and some fairly significant building masses. And so from when we start to evaluate this from a building massing perspective and how we can start to relate to the ADCD guidelines, and we look at our adjacent context, it doesn't feel necessarily out of scale. On the next slide. This front elevation is a great one that shows, first, we're holding 3 stories in height, even though RX5 does allow up to 72 feet in height, 5 stories. This building is 31 feet to the eave line, 40 feet to the ridge line. If we were to pursue affordable housing bonuses, we could have a 7-story, 100-foot tall building. Obviously, you start to think about the implications of that on the district, and it's not contextual. It's not aware of its surroundings. It's going to get very disproportionate. But that is currently what the site is zoned for. We are voluntarily holding it to 3 stories. It helps from a building code perspective as well as just being contextual and being aware of the guidelines and the massing and associating with the adjacent height. On the next slide, we're also giving care to breaking down the width. Staff report talks about the adjacent structures' widths and recommendations on widths. And so it is, important to break down this 75-foot parcel into much smaller building portions. And so we have a gable building form that fronts Gordon Ave and is parallel with Gordon Ave that's 36.5 feet wide. There's a gable form that turns itself and fronts and faces Gordon Ave on the corner of the alley that's 22 feet wide. And in between, there's an 8-foot staircase that accesses like an interior courtyard, interior circulation system. So we're breaking down the mass of the building into very kind of relatable, digestible portions, and taking effort to do so, and expressing that circulation element. On the next slide. We're being mindful of the guidelines in a few other key ways as well. Porches and pedestrian level street oriented design faces Gordon Ave. We don't have any vehicular entrances off Gordon Ave or on the front of the parcel. You drive down the alley to access the garage in the rear. We're utilizing materials that are contextual and commonly found in the district: a standing seam metal roof, brick on the base, hardy panel on the body. we are orienting the facade, in the same level of the street, and we have a very orderly and kind of rational rhythm in terms of breaking down this building. And if you go to the next slide, the overall concept of this building was we have this unique and interesting 75 by 100 foot parcel. It's kind of rare you have this perfectly rectangular parcel that's perfectly square. And so take the step backs and set it in, and you have a rectangular brick mass that you can extrude 3 stories. And then we know we need to break down that mass, and so we employ these 2-story gable elements with the traditional building form. And we break down this brick mass. We allow the brick to still be a masonry anchor on the bottom, and where the 2-story gable elements end, we have this kind of background brick building that is very rational, very rhythmic, very kind of orderly. On the next slide, you can see how we're tucking the garage in the back, but we are also utilizing some more contemporary glazing elements to accentuate what's happening on the inside. So where there's living rooms and gathering spaces on the inside, we have the opportunity to break the rule a little bit from the traditional 2-to-1 window proportions and make a larger window bay that starts to just break down a larger facade and create more of a dynamic element on what could otherwise become a little bit static if it was so rational and orderly and prescriptive. On the next slide, and I think I'm pushing up against my 10 minutes here, so this will be the last slide. This just shows from a pedestrian perspective how the mass is appropriately broken down. It's a traditional building form that has some contemporary elements that create a very engaging presence from the street. As Jeff mentioned, this is a preliminary discussion, so we're very eager for your feedback and eager for the discussion. We know we need to come back with a full landscape plan and exterior lighting, and in fact, some of the site plan stuff that I just had up there, the new site plan showed ADA ramps that we need to work through and things like that. But we were eager to get feedback early in this process and see if we could start to thread the needle between some of the zoning changes and the ABCD guidelines.
All right, thank you, sir. Right before we jump in, I guess, want to make sure, do you have any specific questions for us or specific things you want us to address other than just in general?
I think in general, yeah.
Then I'll open it up to the BAR.
Yeah, I think the partie is really strong. I think that breaking it down into the masses that you have and kind of expressing what you call the circulation or the interior courtyard is a nice move to get these forms to be in scale with the rest of the community. So, I applaud you for that. I think there's good bones to work with here. I wish the roof didn't look quite so commercial, and maybe that's just a matter of the rendering, but it looks like, a more standing seam, hand turned standing seam metal roof would probably be nicer. Something like this. Give it more of a residential feel.
I agree with your massing comment. I think that, especially from up above, you really get the sense of how you, not that you appreciate massing from up above, but the different roof forms really, I think, shows the diagram of how you're breaking that big square down into these individual parts. And I applaud you for kind of being sensitive in that way and being sensitive to setbacks and contextualizing this in its surroundings, because you're right, it's a mixed-use street, but it does have a certain consistency in massing, has a consistency in yard space, and that's a good thing. It makes it a strong street. I had a couple of questions I guess. One is that, what's the space on the right-hand side on the corner, down in the first floor?
It's actually going to be bike storage.
Oh, bike storage, okay. And then there's an apartment on the other side, I guess.
That's correct, yeah.
A few comments I guess I have just off the bat as the breakdown of it, you know, compositionally, it seems like it's third, a third, a third, you know, from the base and then the upper portion. And almost kind of feel like it's a little top heavy, almost like wondered what it would be like if you pushed it down a little bit and created more of a, you know, you're talking about that base being an anchor. And I wonder if the anchor would feel more like an anchor if it was a little bit, you know, compressed a bit, so that the top portion wasn't, you know, as elevated. And I don't know, I guess the way it's rendered right now, the top portion actually looks like it's protruding out beyond the brick. Is that the intention there, to kind of?
No, probably not. There are, no, I don't, that wouldn't be the intention. I think, you know, we frame off I was wondering if there was a dimensionality in materials, but probably not. If anything, the brick might be, you know, a full dimensional brick would either stick proud of a hardy panel, or we'd frame the floor system over to make sure that it didn't do that.
I don't think that would be necessarily a bad thing. It could be kind of an interesting detail, depending on how you relate the base to the top. But just to, since this is a preliminary discussion, just something to think about, how that base relates more to the top. And then, you know, also, I don't know how I feel about the windows into the garage in the back, you know, and I wonder if there's an interesting way, since you're evolving into a more contemporary style towards the back, if there's a, you know, way to screen the brick, or if there's a way to do, you know, create something more, you know, a more interesting texture with the brick, or maybe even looking at some different color combinations. I almost feel like, given what's starting to happen in the top, maybe that relates a little bit more to the base, as opposed to the base trying to relate to everything around it, and then the top is something totally different. That's it for now. For me.
So I agree with the massing concept that you've proposed. I think my issue is more with materials. I know our guidelines say that fiber cement panels are appropriate, but it seems to me they're more appropriate as an accent versus an entire face of a building. It looks like you're using a reveal system, which is neat and clean and modern, but I have never seen that done nicely. Maybe you guys could change that, but it does make the facade very monolithic, and it's very stark. And I think the starkness takes away some of the residential character from the neighborhood. So I don't know if there could be, the rest of the board may disagree with me on this because it's going to make it a little less modern, but some additional materiality to it. I do strongly feel that the fiber cement panels should not be used as a full field, but instead, you know, maybe you accent around your two-story windows or something with them, and then go with a different material. I mean, I know what our guidelines say, but I prefer EIFS to fiber cement panels, just with the way it comes out nicer, and it looks more in keeping with traditional materials. It looks more like stucco. And I agreed on the commercial roof. I think you actually did provide a material cut, and it did show a commercial ridge cap, which is one of the big no-nos in our guidelines. But in general, I mean, I think you are on the right track with how you're keeping it to 3 stories, and the way that you've broken it down. Not sold on the exterior stair. I think I give every applicant who does this a little bit of a hard time on that. You guys did a beautiful job on Virginia Avenue. But I feel like the materiality on that project was a bit different, and there was more richness to the facade. maybe as this develops, it'll be the same level of, it'll work out the same way. But just, I guess, to be somewhat cautious of that, because the building is lacking a front door. It just has a big kind of slot opening in the middle of it, which again, kind of is not in keeping with the character of the neighborhood. And actually looking at all your elevations, for some odd reason, the side of the west elevation, to me, feels like the most successful, because it actually feels a little bit smaller. And I don't know if that's just because the brick is lower, because it's a parapet cap, or throwing that out there is something that seemed kind of strange to me. That I don't know why that seemed almost a little more appropriate. Did have a question about that. It looks like you have a garage door opening on the west side. Are you intending to drive through the site?
No, you can't drive through the site, but
Okay.
we did need like a hammerhead turnaround.
Okay.
Some
Oh,
of the
interesting. Got that.
openness from a building code perspective was so this isn't a enclosed parking garage.
Mhm.
That's not to say like we can't explore creative opportunities to screen that parking garage. In an effort to keep the width as minimal as possible, we didn't want to bump like a hammerhead out of the building.
No, that makes sense. And I mean, and you're right. I think our zoning codes issues with active depth are probably going to catch you. So I think you will be forced to do something anyways.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is not to. I'm not trying to. I think this is a really great. You've done. It's a good start. My issues are more with the materiality.
Oh, that's fair. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that the massing makes a lot of sense with the brick volume and then the smaller house size feel of the gable volumes. I'm looking at the kind of street scape and looking at the lines, and I think the way that you're talking about relating to the new zoning code and also taking into concept the existing context, I don't have any issues with kind of where the building sits. It seems like it might be a little more regular down the street, but it seems like a lot of these properties do kind of have they vary in the setback. So I think I don't have any issues with where the building's situated. Jumping into the materiality conversation, the only piece that feels odd to me is along the alley elevation. The brick, I understand the brick inside the courtyard and as the mass, but then when you see it between the two gables, seeing the brick floating there feels odd. I don't know if you want to bring in a third material. Maybe you do at that point, or switch to just a different color of whatever the fiber cement or the stucco ends up being. But something about that small amount of brick that's just a ribbon around the slider doors feels odd, I think.
Yeah. It's a place we kind of debated and struggled with internally. And do you introduce a fourth material in one location and it feels like a one-off? Do you like respond to the party, which is this brick massing? So yeah, no, I think it's a good point.
And that's really all I had as far as comments. I think it's successful preliminary. It will fit in the neighborhood.
All right. I echo everything that everybody said, so I'm not going to repeat, but thank you. Nice job, and we look forward to seeing how it develops. That's pretty much it, unless anybody else has other comments or questions on this particular project. Kevin, did you have any others? Like I said, now that we've had a discussion, do you have any other specific questions that have come to mind?
No, thank you all for the thoughtful comments. We appreciate it. It sounds like materiality, addressing materiality to kind of emphasize the residential nature more so, even if that means maybe interjecting something that gets away from this sort of maybe pure modern stark element, maybe. Or maybe not. We'll test that. And then some screening at just trying to summarize, maybe some different approaches around the garage and whether that extends, on that slot on the eastern facade. That sounds like appropriate places to study and revise.
Yeah.
Is there any way to like lower the garage slab level? Because it does kind of go up. Where you enter, it appears, at least when I remember, I was telling everybody that was my first place of residence in Charlottesville. When I remember, there's a bit of a hill that goes up.
It goes up. The alley goes up, and then the existing house is kind of up on that bank. And
Yeah.
at some point, they meet, as it's going. So I don't think the garage actually goes up, and it may appear so in our renderings, but once the site plan develops, I think what's happening is as the alley is coming up, it's meeting that bank at that garage entry. But
there's some creativity that can be made there for kind of lowering the slab of the garage to kind of sync things, because Carl mentioned the west elevation, but I'm kind of drawn to the north elevation for some reason. And I think it's, again, sort of that compression that happens at the base.
And when you say compression at the base, does the gable form start to come lower, or does the brick form start to come up to like a second story sill? I think when you say compression at the base, I think you mean drop it, but I just want to be clear on that.
Well, it's just my personal opinion, but I think it's just the proportion of the base to the upper part, having a less of a 1/3, 2/3, and having the base appear more like a bringing that top 2/3 down a bit, so it's not so top heavy, so not
Gotcha.
so high.
Okay. All right.
But again, just my opinion. I don't know how other people feel about that.
Just a comment that is not directly on, thank you, I got it. Directly on your preliminary drawings or the proposed, but I just wanted to thank you because we've got 2 pages in the submission, which is preliminary discussion, that shows not only did you read the guidelines, which sometimes I'm not sure if some of our applicants actually have even laid eyes on the guidelines, but you take guidelines and you project them and interpret them and say, this is how we're trying to meet the guidelines. And that approach is really above and beyond what we usually get, and I certainly appreciate it. I mean, I know it's, in some way, it's a persuasive piece. You want us to approve this, but it also is just, it's really helpful. So thank you for taking the time to do that.
Great.
Sure,
That's a
yeah.
lesson I learned
I
the
mentioned,
hard way.
I've mentioned to Kevin several times, his submittals, help explain the design. And like with Wordland Street, the progression of the scale and the massing. And so, yeah, the applications are very helpful. I just wanted to offer one thing. I was a little scared when you started beating up on the building because David told us earlier that this was his first house or first housing in Charlottesville. So I thought I was going to talk about what a terrible plan. No, good. The one thing, it's something that Carl had raised years ago, the parking area and screening the level, and I'm looking at here, when someone's pulling into a space, lights aren't shining through, and I'm not getting the phone call that the new building is shining car lights in the windows, so that's just.
I see. From a parking perspective, the openings are not.
Or screen it, something, yeah, that's one thing that's come up. And I absolutely won't pretend to be broadcasting but I think one of the challenges we have, particularly with the new zoning, is what space is left for trees. And Carl, you can maybe, when we talk about guidelines later, reflect on the conversation at the Planning Commission last week about, how do you put a 60-foot tree in a 10-foot space? So how that's treated. But to just looking at the drawing, one of the things that struck me in this neighborhood, there's a lot of low walls, and this isn't maybe the best image to show it, but it got me thinking, would a low wall help? It does,
There is a low wall currently,
okay.
but I think your new site plan was showing the streetscape, moving that around.
I
I
don't know,
don't
just
think there's a low wall there.
I think in Google Street View, there.
like, does that help set? It looks like it's sitting on top of a little knoll. And does that wall help with that? Just an observation.
Okay, so yeah, it's just a slope.
It's a bank, and I don't think there's a sidewalk on this side of the street currently that we know is going to be required, so I think it's planning for that.
And that bank could be sort of pointed out to feel like
Okay.
a more structural element there, which would probably help it. I think, just a layer of landscaping, obviously, when you get to it, I know these are just placeholders right now, but I think there's an opportunity actually to do something positive
Just
there.
skip the windows.
I will say our owner did make the comment to our civil engineer that one area that he doesn't want to shortchange is landscaping. I think he's a big landscape guy. I'll put that out there.
All right, well, thank you.
Thank you so
Appreciate it.
much. We appreciate it.
All right, and Kevin, let me give you your widget back. I've accumulated like thousands of these, so if you ever, need one,
Jump drive in his computer.
you know where to go.
All right, well, we had a scratch in our lineup, so we've got room for an additional better. 0 Park Street. Preliminary discussion.
Yeah, Mr. Kevin? Yes,
A new house.
right, so, and I appreciate you all allowing me to bring in a backup pitcher here, or a hitter, runner, whatever. Just had an opportunity with the 747 project being pulled from the discussion, and talking to Kevin yesterday, just an opportunity to get him before you all. And this is another preliminary discussion. Again, because of the scale required by our code to meet with full VAR and have a discussion. 745 Park Street. It was actually, it's 0 Park Street, so you get the chaos of changing your address, like moving without moving at all, and going through all that fun. But this came to you to the BAR, I think a year or 2 or 3 ago. Proposal to remove or to demolish the existing house that was there. Hang on, let me get the. And in the interim, Mr. Riddle has, well, he can explain why, but in lieu of removing the existing house and reconstructing, to go to the parcel behind the existing house and construct something new. And it's when you use the guidelines and talk about typical spacing, typical heights, typical this and that, this is a bit of an unusual situation. One, at that end of Park Street, only the west side is in the historic district. Maybe there's 10 houses there between I think it's only 8 between the bypass and the church, ranging from late 1800s to 1920s, 1930s. On the east side are a lot of single and a story and a half brick buildings from the 30s, 40s, and 50s. So, and it's also a lot of vegetation. This is again behind. This is well behind an existing house. So, sort of saying what's necessary for it to be appropriate in the district. I don't know, I feel like the canvas is an opportunity to be a little blank here. Our guidelines do encourage, in fact, I had a note that, well, emphasized it to myself that in the guidelines for new construction under details and decoration, it goes on to describe, what to do. Do you try to mimic historic? Do you try to do something new? And the conclusion is drawn that more successful new buildings may take their clues from historic images and reintroduce and reinterpret designs of traditional decorative elements, or may have a modernist approach in which details and decoration are minimal. So the guidelines give permission here for a level of creativity and the site and the location. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Riddle, let him explain his design. And again, this is a preliminary discussion. No action is going to be taken. Same objectives as before, to come up with any questions you might have, answer any questions Kevin might have, and get to where we can have a successful application for a formal COA.
Hi, I'll make a brief introduction to the proposal. This is an independent structure, a pretty modest one, about 1,000 square feet that we're proposing to build in a lot behind our property at 745 Park Street. We had applied for demolition of the house a couple of years ago, maybe it has been a couple of years ago, but our plans changed, and so we're going to keep the house, and we want to build now. This is about 80 feet behind the house. In fact, one of the things that is prominent in the backyard, you see it in the foreground, is a nice walnut tree. We might have considered, building this closer to the existing house, but the tree compelled us to have it in this location. It's rather far from other houses. Maybe even the next image, Jeff. So there you see an aerial, and the site is identified. We have the large Baptist church there to the southwest. The house directly to our south, y'all have seen before, where they removed the aluminum siding. It's been painted, very nice. And I think you're going to be hearing more about the house to our north in future meetings. And the next slide, Jeff, if you could go to that. Actually, one more. This is a survey, kind of repeating some of the info you saw there. So there's the existing house from the 1950s with 745 over it. That's what we're keeping for now. We do plan to improve it at a future phase, but we're holding off for now. So the proposed house is the one you see at the west. There's a large walnut tree between the existing house and the proposed. And so we just wanted to put this in front of you, let us know what our plan is here. It's a house that will be rarely visible from public ways. You have Park Hill that's up at the very north. It's a dead-end street at the very north of this photograph. And there's places where you can peek through, but again, the house is rather low. There's a lot of plantings. In winter, of course, it's going to be a little more visible through there, but barely so. If you look up our driveway to the rear, you might get glimpses of it occasionally when there's no vehicles there. And then between 747 and 745, you might also be able to get some glimpses. We do have some rather large arborvitae in the front yard, which I don't know if they're our favorite, but they are very big. So they do screen the property quite a bit. I think the rest of the presentation gives you a rundown of the basic material palette we're going for here. So at this point, I welcome your comments and questions.
I'll start. I'll just be quick. I think you'd have to do something really egregious for me to have any concerns about this. So I think what you have looks beautiful, and it's just a little. It looks like a little backyard pavilion. I have absolutely no concerns. Thanks.
I have a question. So is this 2 lots? Is this a separate lot?
It is a separate lot. We have a number of hoops to negotiate, whether we consolidate the lots. It's possible we could call it non-conforming and still develop it, but I suspect that the bank might have some issues with that. So it's likely that we will consolidate the properties before this is built, and luckily with the new development code, we can have more than one structure on the property.
And if that's the case, does it then not need its own access, or how are you handling vehicular access?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. We don't have anything proposed at the moment. It's possible we'll want to extend the driveway somewhat. I'm a little reluctant to give up much of the backyard and the space in between the houses to car parking, but perhaps it would be practical and useful to create something there to screen it somewhat. We'll also eventually want some sort of walk that leads to this house, although that has not been proposed yet at this point.
But aside from that, I mean, I agree with Carl. This is a really handsome, nice little jewel back there.
Thanks. Maybe I should ask, at next month's meeting or whenever we bring it back for formal presentation, is there any more information basically within the application that would be helpful to you in making a vote?
Lighting,
Yeah.
Right?
which I can't see being a problem unless you decide to
'Cause
put a
you-
giant spotlight back there that shines the neighbor or something.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, what's the, what is the construction of the porch? There's sort of like a stringers or something up on their ends that happen, up above the plinth.
Yes. Well, there's one extremely long step there that has
Oh, I see.
just some supports underneath
I
it.
see, okay.
Yeah.
That's a neat detail. I really appreciate the sort of location of this in relationship to the tree. That is looks like a beautiful tree.
Yeah.
It seems like a really suitable way to deal with that such long property. Good, I mean, I think it's good land use. It's appropriate in scale. It's like Carl was saying, it looks, or somebody said it looks like a beautiful little pavilion. So I think it's a pretty exciting little project.
Yeah. Thanks.
What's the roof material?
We just are planning to have a membrane roof on it and parapets.
I would just caution with the walnut tree being there.
Oh, well, and also that the chestnut tree, the Chinese chestnut tree to the southwest, that the balls that it sheds, I know.
And
There's-
walnut can also stain.
Yeah, right, no, for sure. You
Not
hold
trying
one
to
of those in your
say-
hand for a few minutes.
Yeah, I agree with the other board members. I don't see reason to object to this. I just offer that as friendly advice on materiality and thinking about, light colors are gonna stain if it's under a walnut tree, so, but you're showing dark, so.
Right.
And I agree with Carl that we'd wanna see lighting.
Yep.
Pretty cool.
Do you have views from there?
Views from the house,
Yeah, from this proposed location?
like illustrated, or do we expect to have views?
No, I just know this is you're on a very high point in North Downtown, and I don't know if the parking lot is at grade or whether it begins to slope down, but obviously beyond the parking lot, then you're at a pretty nice place. I just wondered if you have views
No.
of the west.
Yeah, it appears to me with our property that we'd need to be up at maybe a roof over a second story, really, before we could start to have some of the views, which you're right, we are on a bit of a ridge there. But there actually are also some nice views to the east, especially in winter time. But I think with this particular structure, you know, our hope is that just the porch that we have facing our existing house is going to be a nice place to hang out and gather. There are a lot of kind of a nice array of plantings between our property and the one south of us there too, so it'll feel pretty secluded. But at the rear of this structure, we're really just looking into, there's maybe a hackberry and another walnut back there, but then it's just the paving of the church parking lot, yeah.
Didn't know if you could see over it.
Yeah, no, not really, unfortunately.
I have no comments at all about the materials. You know, even in your little sub-block of Park Street, you've got just about every exterior material imaginable. And this looks like a wonderful little project, so, yeah. And it really is, the fact that it's not seen from public views or really from any other private properties except for 504 Park Hill, and I'm about to send that to the owners because I'll see them tomorrow, actually.
Yeah.
They're friends of mine, the Taylors.
Right.
Just, you know, so that they know what you're planning, but gosh, there's a lot of privacy back there, so.
Right.
Like others have said, that augurs for a lot of, you know, less input from us, I would say.
Right.
As someone who lives downtown in a modern designed house, I really appreciate this design. I think I agree with Carl, but I have absolutely no problems with it.
Okay, great. All right. Thanks,
We look forward
everyone.
to seeing it develop. Thank you, Kevin.
Yeah.
All right.
Have us over.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
We have them.
We don't do fireworks anymore.
If we have them.
Used to. Well, they used to be in the parking lot, in the county office building.
Sure.
Yeah. It's cute.
Oh, you think we're
Oh,
done, right?
I want to run it. I know.
So,
It's like hairball.
Speaking of crazy things, church parking lot.
It's basically Ridge Street extended. You know, or you.
It's a large building.
Right.
I'd like to move into the, I might take a 2-minute break, rearrange tables. I don't, maybe would it help that
That's me.
be sitting close to each other and having a conversation?
I even, this goes down. These people-
So I'm going to take a quick
I'm looking to-
break. I'm going to push the tables together, and then it is
It really dropped.
6:30, so I think
We're fucking higher.
All right, in case anybody's watching on TV or online, we're going to take a 5-minute break to reorganize the room and prepare for a discussion about our design guideline updates. We'll be talking about the Rugby Road, University Circle, Venable Neighborhood, ADC District first, and then if we have time, we may cover one or two others. So we'll take a 5-minute break. Ding!
that's why I put a lot on paper, so. It's this.
Okay. I'm good.
All right, so quickly.
I'll call us back to order. Ding.
Ding. What I gave you all.
I know.
It's 4 pages. That's the rugby, universal
E-circle, rugby,
circle,
Venable.
and it's all 4 sides. Those are the from the notebook thing that we had put together. Then I gave you a single page that's the top Whitney draft, Tyler's draft, and modifying the Rugby Road Universal Circle Venable Neighborhood District. The second 8, 9 by 11 is what's in the actual intro chapter of the design guidelines, and it also includes the West Main Street, Ridge Street districts if we get to it. So what I was really proposing to do is, and I can get my Google car lined up, whatever's the best device to kind of, I guess take some time here. Tyler, you can kind of walk through your description, and I guess just turn it over to you all with the goal of, if we can at least get one, I'd love to get 2 districts talked through tonight, but
You have the thing I sent you earlier?
I do, and I forgot to print it.
Okay, that's fine.
But that was West Main, right?
No.
Which one did you send me?
The one over by the university.
Oh, Oakhurst.
Oakhurst, that's right.
My bad. Maybe I left it out because I didn't think we would get to it. So I'll drive the car, you tell me where to go. As the pilot would say to the bomber, the ship is yours. And tell me what to do.
The existing guidelines for this neighborhood were in decent shape. I just tried to update them with some more context, and some more kind of what's happened since. I have a list of a few properties that I thought could be added, that aren't contributing. There's a lot of sub areas. They're, each kind of have their own character. I think sub-area G, we could talk about whether that is in the correct district or not. It's kind of the corner, it's kind of Main Street. So that one's up for debate. But yeah, would be happy to have any kind of comments on anything. I guess there is kind of an overall conversation about what the district should be called. Currently, it's called Rugby Road University Circle Venable Neighborhood. I guess the school is in the process of having the name changed. I don't think it's become official. There is a neighborhood.
You mean with regard to Venable?
Yes, the Venable name will be changing. He was a Confederate soldier, and the schools are deciding to change the name. There is a Venable Neighborhood Association, so I don't know, if the name lives on as part of the neighborhood, or if we just refer to this as the Rugby Youth Circle neighborhood, or 14th. I don't know if it becomes 14th Street, because
Is it
that's
actually registered? I thought it was, Jeff. So you'd have to go in and change that too.
I would propose leave any name changes to what council might suggest, because that would come down. We have neighborhoods, they're somewhat artificial names that came out of the planning over the century, of the city. So it's curious. Some places not even sure what the source of the neighborhood development name for it. So, but I would just say, for right now, this is what the district is, and that's what we're talking about. If council wants to revisit it in the comprehensive plan, it'd be in several steps to do that. So I think we can let it go. It would not be a result of a recommendation or a, opposition from the BAR.
One thing that was a large omission in the current guidelines there's no mention of the school, and it's quite a prominent building in the neighborhood. So I did add that to sub-area D, but didn't refer to the name just to avoid any confusion. If I think the school's like imminently being, they've already adopted the name. It just hasn't gone into effect like on the side of the school. So
What is it?
I think it's going to be Trailblazers.
I think that's right, yeah.
So there was the group, the Venable Nine were the,
Sorry,
The Charlottesville 12, it was, and
that would be okay. Sorry.
so there were
we're back on
there were 9
commenting.
students and 59 that fought to have the school become integrated. So they were known as the Venable Nine. Some of them actually spoke to keep the name Venable, but the city schools wants to move on. So Trailblazers is kind of taking that name of the people fighting to integrate, being the Trailblazers. So that's where the name comes from.
Thank you
Mhm.
for covering that.
So Jeff, this format seems great. And I think this has been asked before, but the purpose of the grid template here is just to sort of point out some of the issues that we should be looking at when we're
Correct.
putting this
Yeah.
together. We're not just fill out.
Yeah, it's not a crossword puzzle that would fill in the blanks. It's and some of them are redundant, some of them are unnecessary, but it just to provide a framework for discussion to say what about this neighborhood needs to be identified. And the lesson I go back to, or at least the instruction I go back to, Tim Moore several years ago suggested that for any large scale project, we should, before even looking at the design, look at the district, look at the site and say, all right, what's the preservation, what are the principles that we're going to adhere to on this particular project? What's important here, what matters here? So the idea is that we can sort of generally, we don't have to, obviously any project comes in, we're going to take a finer grain look, at the property and what's nearby, but this is maybe to set the table for that. And I feel like some of the things that are in the current descriptions are just sort of generic. They don't really instruct you all as far as, for example, I mentioned the low walls. There are elements that, that might, be mentioned so that they come to play when we, have a project come in. So that's all. I think if you went down these lists and sort of thought about, like for example, I know over in this area there's a lot of old granite curbstones, and I often fight to save them when I can. I'm not sure it's even mentioned in here. I think it might be something in our general guidelines, but there are a lot of retaining walls and stone walls in places, and there's brick piers, entrances in old subdivisions and things that, you know, we don't notice or mention. So that's what, you know, I'd like to get to, is that.
Like the Preston Place piers.
So the idea is that this would be incorporated as part of the guidelines eventually, as these descriptions would be.
The
It would
state-
be, you know, we don't have to use the same format currently in chapter 1, but it doesn't hurt to, what's in this text here,
Right.
I simply pulled out of the guidelines.
Sure.
And that's actually, when you look at it sort of individually, you know, it does kind of raise some questions about, you know, a mix of moderate to large scale fraternities, sororities, and apartment buildings. You know, is that really, you're not telling us how the place is used, but that's not necessarily saying what are the architectural elements, historic elements about this place that matter. So,
Can we walk around?
go ahead.
Oh, that's my sorority house, hey. That's our cottage out back, right there. Right-
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Yours?
Yeah, I didn't live in the cottage, that's the cottage right, yeah. The, just beyond that is the two-story cottage, and that belonged to us, and the house directly to the right of it is 632 Preston, where I lived for a year of my life.
Won't let me go there, Sherry, sorry.
It's okay.
So I guess I find the sub areas to almost be more important in terms of when we're evaluating a project, because, you know, University Circle and 14th Street, very different character.
Yes, they are.
And so I think maybe something is figuring out the broad stroke description that encompasses the entire area, and then really just leading folks towards focusing on the sub area might help us out a little bit more. I mean, I think Tyler's done a good job of that.
Yeah. Excellent.
Agreed, and for a format to follow.
Do we want to go through, like, you know, use circle, and then anybody want to drive
Sure.
around?
I also feel like, I don't know if it's Tyler or Jeff, I guess Tyler, you have a few structures that potentially could be added as contributing, which I think that is something that would be valuable for us to look at as a group. And then, Jeff, I don't know if there's a mechanism for that, or how do you add
So the
buildings
mechanism,
as contributing or non?
yeah, the last time that was done is 2014, the BAR reviewed West Main ADC district and added 5 or 6 structures. We can also remove some structures. We can also, you know, recommend massaging the boundaries a little bit.
So that's
The-
part of what we're doing?
It certainly
Oh.
can. The boundaries exist as far as a, the right word, but a document. The boundaries exist in chapter 1 of our guidelines. So it's, the ordinance says there are districts, but those boundaries and what's contributing are per those maps in our guidelines. So recommending a change of those, the ordinance simply refers to the district as represented in the guidelines. So yes, you can recommend that council change some things, move. I would say adding would probably take a little more lifting that then would involve incorporating properties that aren't currently designated. But I think that if there was a reduction, and I do believe there are some places that a reduction is
I do too.
is
Yes.
yeah, valid.
Valley Road, sorry. But presumably for adding structures and so forth, you
It's
would
from 1949. It's just
give
kind of a
notice to the
cool
current
farm.
owners and residents,
You would have,
It
we
wasn't
would have to do
eligible
that.
because
Yeah,
I think
okay.
a lot of it
and
was
they could object if they wish to
needed
do
to be
so.
1920s when the thing was, but now
Okay.
that house is 80 years old and seems to be.
Would we need
Is that
to
Orchard Bulge?
notify
No.
owners if we wanted, if they're within the district, but we wanted to add them as contributing?
Yes, surely.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
anything that would,
Okay.
I mean, they are already subject to that review, but I think to let people know that this is being considered, they may say no. You know, but that's where
again, council gets to make that decision. I think that there's, the cutoff point when these districts were established, was that 50 years. Well, everything's moved forward, almost 20 years in some of these districts. So, but at the same time, I think that it's, you also have the opportunity as something comes in for alterations. But I would suggest, if you want, just take a spin around University Circle and, Tyler, if you wanted to say, what did you see or?
So I just wanted to, before we moved real quick, one of the reasons I asked that question, and I don't know if you all heard that, essentially it was in terms of adding structures that are already within the boundary that we may want to list as contributing that are currently non-contributing, especially with the new zoning. That would then move them to a position where they would need to be our approval for demolition.
Right.
And so I think that is something that we need to keep in mind, and, if there's something that's worth saving, we should look towards listing
do
as
it.
contributing before people start just tearing stuff down so they can build a big apartment. All right, now we can take our tour. Thank you.
I feel like we should have music. Do, do, do.
Are we just going to the
We're going through.
1880 University Circle?
I'm really trying not to be the cruise director. so
Okay,
just-
Those,
yes.
Let's go down the list.
As we're going, those apartment buildings are really interesting.
Yeah.
They're well preserved. They're cool. They're like 3 to 4 stories and just kind of unique.
Yeah.
Yeah, if we could go to like the intersection of U Circle and University Way and drive the loop the way I walked it, turn left.
We'll say there's been a lot of activity on these apartments over the last couple of years and will continue. The owner's been taking advantage of rehabilitation tax credits and working with DHR. A lot of rehab and even some restoration to remove some non-historic elements. So it's a lot going on over there.
They came before us, right?
They would not if it was worked with DHR.
Oh, never mind. I'm thinking another property then.
I mean, it would come to me, but not you.
Ooh, look at that. Look at those windows. What's that?
Is that Jack Jewett? Maybe Jack Jewett's the next one.
Yeah, I believe this is the Jack Jewett Apartments, yeah.
All right, why don't you turn right?
Yeah, and this is, I will point out too, this is a lot of where the granite curb is, and I've actually gotten good support from engineering to preserve them, so, but,
And look, that rock wall there.
yeah.
I did not mention granite curbs in my write-up, so that would be something good to add. 1880 is just to the right. Not the one on the street corner, but it's the next property in. It's a little house. It's from 1959. It's not contributing, but it fits the neighborhood well, and it's
This is the
65.
Manahan House.
where are we going? Where are we going?
Yeah.
Just type in 1880.
We just need to go there. I'm sorry.
Wait,
You're right.
Uber drivers just
We're one of those
Well, he's stuck behind a utility truck.
bicycle ones
Yeah.
where you have to pedal at the same time. Around Lars
all right.
City.
If you look to the left,
Whatever.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Pedal pub.
And I have a useless mouse.
it's there. Oh,
There you go.
There you go.
yeah. It's a cute little house,
What's the year on it?
1959.
Do we know who the architect is?
I don't believe there's an architect on that one.
You got
Looks like Flemish Bond.
57 listed. Is it 57 or 59?
Oh, sorry, 57.
So I will say, I know the front porch is new. I think the dormers are new. I know this house came to us at one point. I forget all that went into it, but there was an application. I'm kind of making a hard line that nothing after 1950 should be added. That's where I stand.
When I was
something
on-
that's
Some
been,
really cool modern thing.
Yes.
When I was in the BAR almost 20 years ago, we voted to add the Wachovia Bank Building in Barracks Road, which dates to 1976. And at the time, it was like 25 or 30 years old, but, hey, it's round. So I think it was more of an effort at staff at that point to thwart redevelopment of
yeah.
Barracks Road Shopping Center rather than it was to, anyway. So I don't really agree that there's a year cutoff that I would apply. I'd like to know more about it, like to see, it does look like.
I think it would be worthwhile, and Richard Guy Wilson's often asking me about 1950s, 1960s buildings around town, and we just don't have records, but we do know who, the famous architects were that practiced in town, and it would be interesting to explore those and, who were those individuals and what
What's the address
buildings
again?
did they design.
1880.
A very good year.
A lot of their files are at UVA, Special Collections.
Yeah, I think there are probably some buildings after 1950 that would qualify. I'm not so sure this one has anything that's really distinctive about it that would.
Well, I don't think we can, well, I would say the landscape, sorry to interrupt, I think the walls, the two tiers of landscaping, old stone walls is pretty significant.
I don't know that those are old.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah,
They look like the ones on my street in front of my house.
they do, but
There is a
there
historic,
was a lot of, yeah, I'm sorry.
It's like someone just like, I mean, we do stuff like this all the time with the look of walls that look old.
Okay.
so the GIS map that Molly started to put together has like a historic district landmark for like each of these properties. So there is one for this house. The pictures aren't great, so it's hard to tell.
That shows this landscaping.
It looks like the lower,
Here.
there's a lower stone wall that's original.
Okay.
And then that second, the higher one closer to the house might be.
Here you go.
Newer.
Just do the Google
Yeah.
Time Warp thing. So yeah, the porch is new. The dormers are all new.
I mean, when you look at that, it looks like every house on Mosley or,
Yeah, it's your typical little brick Cape Cod.
It's not like a unique house. It just
yeah.
Well,
feels like it fits in the neighborhood well. So, I mean, nothing that we need to add. So there is one that's like two houses down that we should look at that does have an architect associated with it, Milton Grigg. And it's an interesting house.
35, or is it 1836?
35,
It's the gray painted brick.
yeah, it's a nice house.
Which is
Go down a little bit and then turn left, like look left.
It has a distinct 1960s thing going on.
No, you've gone too far.
Too far.
Molly sent out an email.
Yeah, the little.
Oh, that's where Anastasia lived.
That's the rumor.
Oh, not this one.
What?
The blue one is where I lived when I first moved to Charlottesville, like Dave Timmerman.
All right, that turn
Look to
right.
the right.
Look to the right.
Right there.
That's that
That's
house.
Anastasia's.
I'm tempted. Can I connect?
A woman that claimed to be Anastasia lived in this house.
Anna Moynihan,
And a-
claimed to be Anastasia, and the whole Anastasia, the musical and book is about, she lived there, and it was in horrible shape when I lived next door.
She's buried at the UVA cemetery, too.
I thought you were going to say she was in the backyard or something.
No.
No, that would be my family.
She was they were both hoarders, she and her husband, who was a history professor, and it was really in bad shape. It's been,
Yeah, but
It
yeah,
didn't
if
look
anybody's interested in the
didn't look
University Cemetery, Professor Manhan's stone, and then she's next to him, and it says Her Imperial Highness Anastasia of Russia. So
I mean,
Apparently the DNA proved
Did
that
not
she
write.
was
really did.
No.
not Russian royalty.
but hey, we've just talked about, I mean,
No, it's people know the story. It's
Yeah.
like historical at some
Right.
point. Right?
I mean, is she a historic figure? I would say even, because she was, even though she was disproved, he went to his grave believing it. I mean, he was.
I have a story we'll share later.
Well, I'm just saying, if a reason to designate something is a connection with a historic figure, and I would say she, at least her husband, he was really, he wasn't seen as kooky, except
When he got
the
old
fact that
and-
he
He
really
was.
believed the story, except for, well,
I mean,
Was.
he was, you knew him.
Well, it is
Nothing about
also,
the
Montana.
architecture that would qualify this, I think.
The
Did you say
center-
nothing about the architecture,
No, I
Roger?
mean,
The center portion wasn't like that when I lived there. It was just the two extending portions, but it was more like a breezeway between. I'm not even sure that gable was there. I think there was a door, but it was more like a breeze. I think that was added. I'm not sure. You can do your time warp thing.
Well, I don't think it's gonna go back that far. Sorry, Sherry.
But what?
Goes to 2008,
Oh, okay, never mind.
which does, something is going on there, but I'm not quite sure what.
Oh, there's a giant arrow in the middle of the air.
Oh,
That's
so
what-
it was there. That's weird.
But it looks, something's different. Oh, there's the circle, okay.
No trees.
It looks like they just did the whole,
It looks like it's been completely redone,
Yeah,
right?
that was the front yard when I lived there. No, it's good.
that probably is on a survey. Anybody have the surveys open?
I can,
Well,
Oh, yeah,
Jeff,
that's a
you
good
keep
idea.
driving on Google, and we'll get someone else to open the surveys.
I can look, I can find the surveys.
I have the survey.
Okay.
What are we looking for?
This one. 35.
Yeah.
Circle.
Well, what do you want to see
Oh,
on the
does it have a
survey?
picture
Yeah, does it just?
from 1980
Yeah,
or
like the
whatever?
old ones?
Like, I mean, you can't see
Oh,
anything.
you can't see anything?
No.
Okay.
I have most of those originals, and they're even worse
But
than that.
It's dated as 1960. It has an architect listed as Milton Grigg.
Mhm.
It's listed as painted brick originally, so,
It was, I think it was white or gray, it was gray, but that middle part wasn't the same. I think they messed up Milton's design.
So the challenge with
it refers
university,
to it as U and plan, and so I think a lot of it's original, but.
the challenge in University Circle is there are, and one as you guys have noted, there are quite a few non-contributing structures, and then everything else is somewhat eclectic and all over the place. Some people have come in and renovated, updated some of the older buildings. What I get most inquiries about with the non-contributing buildings is people want to replace the windows, and that's been quite a few of those over here. And if it's a 1980s building, and so I get that, but it's when you've got something. The other thing we get, we have a lot of big trees in University Circle, and I know that as we went around the corner, there was, there's one big house, the gentleman,
The loop here doesn't have like many overhead power lines, so the trees are huge. It's
right.
really, really nice.
That is,
And there's but this is where some of these have come down, or they start leaning, or they're, people have asked me, if my tree came down in the storm, do I need to go to the BAR? But it's, sorry, this, am I in, what year am I?
Now, any tree that is over 8 inches in diameter needs to get a permit to come
Yeah.
down.
So I think that
Tree
it's,
does?
Mhm.
Has to get its own permit?
The tree comes to City Hall and applies.
it's complicated. So it's where,
Walks on
when
it.
something comes in here, what are you,
Smart Alex.
Sorry.
what are we looking
Where
to
are you finding
in
this
the
surveys?
guidelines in this district?
There's a map that Molly,
Why am I not finding it? I thought they were here.
No, go to
Let me just go back.
Historic and Preservation Design Review. Historic Resources Committee.
Oh, it's under HRC.
yeah,
You sure?
so I guess in terms of
it's not on
35,
that map.
if
It's
we
on
really wanted to
this
chase
map.
that down, Milton Grigg's drawings are in
Okay.
UVA Special Collections Library.
I think that's it.
It would take probably a lot of digging. But I guess you know, I think that this is one where if we were able to do the research and show that this, that 35 University Circle, like, still maintained its architectural integrity based on his original design, then perhaps it would be worth considering as an example of its architecture. But if it's shown that it's changed a lot over the years, then probably not worth, aside from the legendary status of Anastasia.
No worries for me if we don't add any of them to the list.
Yeah.
I just thought that they were fit in the neighborhood well and were interesting
Oh, but-
homes.
No,
I should be able
I
to look at the
appreciate it,
entire-
and I
the
think,
entire
I guess, I don't think we're
survey.
necessarily gonna answer
It may not be.
yay or nay on every single one of these tonight.
Yeah.
We might have some yay, nay, and further research required.
Okay, so you look
So
under each.
I'd list it as a further research required. Don't spend more than an hour on that.
Well-
So should we look at 1836?
I believe that's 1836 right there. The two-story brick with the, I think it's stucco above.
Ah.
Um, kind of an interesting building.
Well,
1959.
I think that's an 80s house.
That one?
Which one are we looking at, the one on the right or the one on
What
the
are we
left?
Oh.
talking about?
you know,
1836 is this guy. So,
Is that that brand new
I'm
one?
gonna just lose my sound wave. No.
Sherry and I are going to see Richard
Oh.
Guy Wilson tomorrow night. We'll
That's-
ask him
that's
for
the
his
brick.
Yeah.
list.
What was I?
It's been, things have been done. Yeah. It's definitely an old front door at least.
Yeah.
Okay, 1832, 1836.
Oh, I guess 1836
Yeah,
looks
that
way
i-
different than what it. The brick is original, and then they added that second story.
Yeah, it looks like that's been really altered. And the upper level looks pretty new.
The upper level is not
Finding out the
not
reasons
1959.
for contributing.
Yeah.
This is good.
Yeah.
Scratch it.
That's what design develops, wants to be. Oh. Okay, never mind. Maybe not.
So that kind of takes us through use circle.
Yeah, actually.
Based on what you were
I kind
saying.
of like it. It's sort of like a
Jeff, it
little
seems like the bar
tutorish,
needs
you
to be
know?
pretty high for something to be added to the list. And, I mean, I think these are all interesting houses and they have, you know, lots of good qualities, but they don't seem to meet a standard of like, oh my gosh, we should have had that on the list.
But wasn't it just age that made the original list?
No, because they had some
No, it
newer
was-
ones.
Yeah, like the Wachovia Bank Building.
So that's been added later, but originally, like, the district was everything that was 80 years old or something became
So it
contributing.
depends.
right?
I know downtown and north downtown, there were some that just, this council just said everything that's existing. The districts have been created in a couple of different ways. Primarily, they were in the late 70s, early 80s, National Register surveys, and then the nomination, and then what got designated was then adopted by the city as the boundary generally. For example, the Wortland Street district that's on the National Register has somewhat different boundary. The city added some contributing structures that are not on the National Register. Ridge Street, the city added some contributing buildings that are not on the National Register. West Main Street National Register District goes all the way to Ridge Street, but the West Main ADC District. So there's some variation, but the tendency has been in later districts to rely upon the whoever completed the survey and their recommendation of what will be contributing or non-contributing for a National Register district. We are way behind in updating some of these district surveys. When I say district, updating the National Register District Survey, again, they're done, 30, 40 years ago. So one option is to, when we are able to fund those, do those updates and have the consultant make recommendations on contributing, non-contributing. That said, I think that there are some unique gems out there, and likely owners would be willing to, someone might say, no, I don't want to, but if someone's willing to, it would certainly, I think, if there are Milton Griggs houses out there, or, I don't know, Frank Lloyd Wright houses in Charlottesville, whatever, that sort of jump to the front of the line in this process, I think they're worth considering. But I would agree that it's the most gentle boat rocking is probably ideal as we move forward.
I don't know if this is a dumb question, but so like in this case, say the whole university circle was contributing houses, except for maybe this house and the one next door. Is there any sort of are we entitled to say that those two houses are contributing just by way of the fact that they're part of the fabric of that neighborhood?
So the term contributing relative to a National Register district is that the district prefers, or the DHR and the National Park Service prefer a district that is the sum of its parts. So to something being contributing may or may not mean it's eligible for individual listing. But it's that it's called a district, so what contributes to that district is considered contributing. In a Section 106 National Historic Preservation Act review, a contributing structure carries the same regulatory weight as something that's individually listed. Now, scrub that off, drop down to city-designated historic districts. We say contributing, non-contributing. The only thing that means is that you all review demolition of contributing. You don't review non-contributing. But an alteration to a non-contributing, you all still review. So it's, I guess I speak the language all the time, so I know the nuances, but just sometimes that understanding of contributing and non-contributing at the national register level and the local level mean different things. And
there needs to be some sort of I don't know, some sort of like guideline or regulation for that situation to keep certain historic neighborhoods intact. And I think of like the development that was on Park Street, the one that was recently remodeled, that kind of horrible development that was on the corner next to the pool house, or it's close to the pool house.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's the neighborhood properties.
yeah.
It looks good.
It looks better than it
Yeah.
used to be, but it was like, I hated the fact that it was there on that street, it's like, I feel like that street was it just sort of was it was a complete anomaly when it was built on that street.
You could blame Lloyd Smith, pool owner.
Do you know what I mean? The idea of like protecting the sort of the fabric of a neighborhood, or a special neighborhood, or a special street. That to me, that just seems like something that should be in the cards, something that we should be talking about.
well, you all do have the ability, again, anything that happens on a property within the district is under your purview. If this house right here, which is non-contributing, if they wanted to alter it, they would still have to come to the BAR.
Yeah,
If
it's
they
just
want
a
to knock it down and build something new, the something new would have to go to the BAR. And that's one of the challenges here we have is like, there's a lot of stuff the BAR has approved over the last 50, 60 years, believe it or not. There's been a BAR since, I think, the 1950s. So do those in that they are approved, should they become contributing, automatically? But I think that it's where when something comes into this neighborhood, for example, when they said, or the project on Gordon Avenue you just looked at, what is it that design needs to emulate, respect, ignore? That's the challenge we have. We know this is a university neighborhood. We know it's past. what we are not articulating, or we need to articulate, is when design development comes in for, because this house next door is, a 1980s house or whatever, or actually, next one this way. What is it that you all want to see? Is that articulated in here?
So you want us to get more specific even?
Not more specific, but I think less lifestyle-y, I think that, we say wooded lots. I don't know. It really, does that mean large street trees? Are large street trees prominent? Are there? And I guess we would say yes. So that, I think, some more, not specific, but more precision. That's. The easy one is Oakhurst, Gildersleeve, where you can say, there's a lot of stuff here from the 20s and a lot of stuff built with rocks and stones. There's a style there that's pervasive. It's not so easy here, but that's where.
So I think that's part of our challenge,
Right.
because these historic neighborhoods do develop over time and do have different styles that still work well together. And I think one thing, for instance, in this particular neighborhood, something that holds the different buildings together is quality, right? Like that can be a character defining feature. Things that are well built and well designed and well thought out, whether they are the exact same style or not, may not matter. So maybe that's a feature here. I don't know. I mean, but that's something that I've kind of struggled with, as we've even talked about this whole exercise of updating these guidelines and trying to like lasso what is this district, because all hats just like this is, or they're all colonial revival. No, not necessarily, right?
I don't think many districts have.
Exactly.
They're all the same.
Exactly.
Right.
Same
That's
type.
why it's really hard for us to write this as
How do you prescribe
something for this.
quality?
Right.
But
Those-
isn't a
those cement
description?
panels.
Sorry.
Those cement panels say, hey, Carl?
Yeah. When we eventually do finally get to those sections of the guidelines, yes.
But isn't the best that we can do, perhaps, is to provide a fairly good description of what is there, so that people will be able to say, all right, this is what the character of the neighborhood currently is, and this is what we may be wanting to preserve.
Right.
I don't know how much more prescriptive you could get.
Right. And that's where, by focusing on sub areas,
I think that's a great idea,
You do
yeah.
start to get to where you're able to
Yeah.
identify a little bit more. Within this sub area, here are the key things to follow.
Yeah, I tried to talk about whether there was a consistent setback or whether everything is 2 stories along that side of the street and that kind of thing. But
It's almost like you'd want to pick 2 or 3 really good examples in each subgroup and not necessarily name them, but sort of describe them, sort of like what Ron's saying. It's like, here's a case, or here are things that work really well in this neighborhood.
I found the same thing on Ridge Street. Like, I had to break it down into subgroups because there's just not. I think it's just a factor of this having been such a small town for so long. There's not a consistent neighborhood feel like the Fan District in Richmond, or any bigger city's going to have a denser kind of a neighborhood intact. So we've got a lot of disparate parts and smaller neighborhoods, and take a couple of those blocks out, and then the neighborhood loses its feel. So. Breaking it down into more specifics just helps key into, if you're in that subgroup, key into those sort of precedents we're talking about. I agree, with Ron, like that the more descriptive we can be, it gives you just, I think it gives the designer a little bit more guidance, a little bit more, clarity as far as what to bounce ideas off of, or what ideas to sort of bring up in the discussion. And ultimately, that's a good thing, is it sort of guides the design, and it sort of steers it towards that consistency
of that subregion.
Then we're kind of, so we're getting into the, you know, the point of describing in great detail each of these subregions and everything that's in them, which anybody who's designing one of these subregions needs to go out and take pictures of all the adjacent properties, needs to do their homework and understand what is existing in the neighborhood. When we review these projects, we need to do the same. So I'm almost wondering, do we instead just focus on these are the things that are important? That, you know, when you're doing a building in this project, these are the components of the neighborhood that, you know, are contributing and that are important to relate to. It's like, it's the comments on, like, where we've got descriptions of neighborhoods that describe overhead power lines and expansive parking lots. And in one sense, yes, it's good to describe that, but it's obvious. Instead, should we be picking out the features that are contributing, that should be either copied or respected?
So could you give an example of how that would work?
I think the thing brought up just a few minutes ago, the granite curbs.
Yeah.
I think that's a great example, you know, and that's something that you said that you didn't have included, but as soon as, you could tell, as soon as it was brought up, you're like, oh, that should probably be included, because it's.
Most of that's like public right of way though, right? That's not.
The street.
Well, that's still a.
Yes, but it helps me when I.
It's
It's a character feature, sure.
Yeah, I can think, I mean, I know of several neighborhoods that have stone walls that are
Yes.
almost continuous through the whole
Yeah.
neighborhood.
That should be mentioned.
Like
Yeah.
Jefferson Park Circle, I live off of that. It's like
North
one of the
downtown.
defining features of that. And that's something you could focus on and say, any new building could consider that, should consider that.
And that makes an impact, because like whoever was building or designing this faux Tudor thing, right? Like they bring it in front of the BAR, and you know, there's constantly that reminder there about the granite curbs being in this. Well, you might mention that, say, protect those granite curbs, because you know, if you look up and down the street, they're continuous, so don't just rip them out. Or somebody may be totally oblivious to it and rip them out otherwise.
And I could see, I bet, if not on University Circle, I could find an example of a stucco over masonry with some timbers that is pretty elegant and, you know, is a defining feature rather than sort of a more kind of builder version of it.
When I get an entrance corridor project, because those guidelines are so different from the ADC district, I tend to fall back on exactly what, you know, Carl's, you know, you all were saying here about the quality material, quality design. If it's, you know, that permanence of materials, I mean, I've really gotten where, I know we should have a discussion about stucco and ephes, because I look at some of the things on West Main where the stucco is just looks like, it looks terrible. You know, maybe there is you know, there are materials that we say you must have, you must do this. What I would do on something like this here is, my first and foremost is to say, I look at this landscape street, the streetscape and this spacing. And so, now that's somewhat, you know, inferred by, oh, well, our guidelines say, look at that. But, you know, we don't, you know, maybe that needs to be expressed a little bit better. It's like this is so eclectic here, good design. I mean, if Kevin Riddle's project came in on an empty lot here, why not, right? If it had, if it respected the streetscape and respected the spacing, I just worry you get things like this where you just, like you said, trying to, you know, not sure what it is, but, and maybe the question is less one of what is it that we are looking for people to respect, but is an applicant able to express that? Why did you design that? I mean, what is that design? You know, do we turn it around and say, the characteristics are evident. The applicant has, their responsibility to say, how does this fit into that neighborhood? How does it meet the character of that neighborhood? I don't want to sound like I'm punting, but is that?
Yeah, that gets really hard because, you could approach it by saying, like, here are these historic examples, and that's one path you can go. But then you're right, we have the leeway, right, in our guidelines that a modern house could be on this street, and then it becomes, there's good modern and modern that we would probably all agree is pretty bad. And I don't know.
I like the idea that Carl came up, which was what's important. What do you think is important?
Yeah.
In your analysis.
And it could be in a modern vein, it could be in a,
And I think what Tyler has given us does that. I mean, I think there's a couple sentences in here that I might redo just to, like you say, narrow lots and shallow setbacks have many buildings close to the road with few street plantings. I might just eliminate few street plantings, but it does highlight the fact that we've got a varied setback. So in the 14th Street area, there are setbacks that are close to the street. In other parts, they're set further back, and that is important to know. But I mean, I think you did a really good job of updating each of these sub areas to be more accurate to what they are today. I'm kind of wondering if we're struggling over something that we don't need to be struggling over.
I think it'd be just interesting, I don't know if you have the time, like just take a section and you read it, and then you'll walk through and see if you have anything else to add.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I want to do, just for fun, biking around someday with my daughter.
and that's something we can do on our own. Really.
Yeah.
So maybe it
Pedal and pub.
Yeah.
goes back to us doing homework, which some of us did and some of us didn't.
You did.
No, I did not. Not to this level. I was determined to give everyone bullet points. But yeah, maybe that is the way to take this, is that we go back to our assigned neighborhoods and we do what Tyler did, and then we all take a look at our stuff and come back in our discussion with it being how do we edit what everybody's written up.
But do we go to each other's neighborhood?
I mean, we should, I mean, as members of this board, we probably should be very familiar with each of these districts anyways. Yeah, I know.
I kind of still like the idea of partnerships. But we started down that at some point.
That was my fault.
Why was it? Yeah, it was your fault.
It was my fault because I
That was a good
hate
idea.
group work.
Well,
I
I agree.
I wonder if it makes it any faster though, to do it as a group. You know, I mean, in some ways, you just gotta do it. You just gotta sort of get out there and look.
Requires coordinating with another person.
Yeah, the option is, and forgive me, I know some of you have heard me say this, but the option is a consultant to come and tackle some of these. I have these 8 districts, and recall that the IPP guidelines, but we apply the ADC district guidelines. That's about, the ADC district guidelines, about 125, 150 pages, and I think a lot of it, if I had time, I could go through and make some changes. Several years ago, and most of you don't know, but Carl was on the BAR when we got pretty far along with, I think, at least 3 chapters. We have some changes that we could adapt and modify and insert now. I think my wife suggested to me the other day, can you just feed it into an AI thing and say, here's the National Register or the Secretary of Standards, et cetera, help better summarize this. I mean, there's some truth to that because there are some things that could just be cleaned up. But then we have the Historic Conservation District guidelines, and those are have some neighborhood by neighborhood characteristics. However, we don't have to look at those yet. They have dates to be reviewed that are different from this. And then I also need to update the entrance corridor design guidelines. And so my goal was to get as much done that we could, because I felt like we could put that local touch on it, whereas a consultant's going to give us, you know,
I agree. Yeah, I agree.
but I'm going to take your all's lead here. I really, you know, it's the pressure. I am being asked to get this done, and the reason being is, you know, council's very aware of the zoning ordinance, that there's going to be some conflicts, and I think the sooner we can think through those, the better. But yeah, the onus is on me. But it really, I respect if you all say, look, Jeff, you already asked us to read an awful lot of stuff.
I mean, I think it's all, we'll do what Tyler did, let's update. I mean, that shouldn't take too long. I'm really anxious to get to the actual guidelines, because to be completely honest, it wasn't until recently that I even read these intros.
Well, they're so bad that you always,
Oh,
I always just skip over them.
It's like, I mean, I know the
There were
neighborhood.
2 sentences, so
Yeah.
it didn't add anything. But I do think, I think it does add something.
It does. So let's get them correct, and then let's get to the actual, the fun part, well, maybe not the fun part, but the part that we actually do deal with in all of our meetings, so that when we cite a guideline, we actually believe in what the guideline says. That could be more my problem than anyone else's, but.
I mean, I'm willing to do this.
Yeah.
From this section.
This isn't too much of an ask. We can,
Yeah, next month.
Just need to do it.
and then just combine it and sort of have everyone look at the whole thing.
It's
and
right.
We edit it.
That's right. And and I know, it's like we just sit down and find a way to do it. I don't know, you know, if something happened during COVID or post-COVID. I mean, every professional I talk to is like, they can't think straight. There's so much. I mean, I get 60 to 80 emails a day.
Try 200.
Well, I can't even imagine that. And I don't know how. So I feel bad, but at the same time, I think that it's, yeah, if we can, you know, follow Tyler's lead here, and you guys can, you know,
Ron did it first.
take a look, right? You know,
I'm just gonna send mine back to you all.
yeah,
so.
and Ron
You
did.
sent it too early, we weren't ready.
Yeah, Oakhurst wasn't in this.
Ahead of the times.
So have we reviewed Tyler's? We kind of just didn't,
I'd say yeah, and then I would.
I mean,
I think part of our
This is
homework
the
is going
what's
to be
in
to
there
review Tyler's along with all of ours.
Yeah, do yours.
This is the what's in there now versus Tyler's, right?
Yeah, it's a huge improvement. And if we can all do that, we'll have made a big improvement.
Yeah.
What do y'all think about the parking garage and the little zigzaggy curtain wall or commercial building on 14th Street there? Does that fit into the West Main Street district?
That's your question.
Sub-area G.
I think it should be taken out, but that's.
I think that having contiguous, it's the same issue I had with the east end of Market Street. There's nothing there that should be contributing, but we kind of want it to be still under our purview.
I feel like the railroad is kind of a good boundary for the corner.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And-
it's this mess in here.
I
I
wouldn't,
guess the question is, so where?
Well, the 2 big apartment buildings are their own thing, but I'm talking about just
that
the
does-
parking garage building and then the.
Parking garage, the one behind, like Boylan Heights.
Yeah, the Boylan Heights building is part of West Main Street Historic District, ADC. But there's 2 that are part of the Rugby Road U Circle Venable District. Sub-area G are, yeah, the zigzaggy commercial building and the parking garage.
Zigzag.
oh, got it, okay.
That's like a big apartment now, isn't it?
No,
No.
That's
it's a one-story, there was like a.
it was, St. Martin's was in there.
Yeah.
I think Noodle Shop stops and the nails and stuff.
And we reviewed,
Yeah.
we reviewed.
The
there's a
Phoenix was
sign
there
on the-
Monday.
There's a sign on that
Gotcha,
north
gotcha.
side.
Yeah, I
that
don't
we
even know if
reviewed.
that needs to be
Yeah, so there's,
listed as anything.
Well, it's not contributing, but it's where does the district end?
right here, and then Wortland begins, and then West Main.
See, I would feel like
The,
almost the corner, to me, the corner goes up to the intersection with JPA,
Yeah.
and then West Main should start.
the current,
West Main at the University Baptist Church.
current description for sub-area G has a sentence that says, in terms of scale and use, these two lots are more compatible with the West Main Street ADC.
They're basically saying, right.
I would be fine with that border adjustment.
But are we talking about adjusting the national?
No, I mean,
No,
that,
just
that would be a
stars.
whole different
Okay.
creature.
Right.
So,
Thank you, Ron.
I mean, they're not on West Main Street.
you're talking about these, this,
Yeah, they don't quite fit in any of the districts. It's like just this weird,
I think it's basically,
we can
they
leave
don't
them,
deserve to be in anything.
I know.
But we're trying to like make a contiguous district and so include them in
the public
something.
plaza is kind of a nice, an open area.
I think it's, yeah.
You know, if they're both non-contributing, they can be torn down.
I like the idea of having like a true, like, you know, when you get into the 14th Street, district,
Yeah.
right? And you don't know, that's that first stretch that we're looking at.
It is,
You do know when you pass Portland.
Those buildings are more closely related to the last couple that are on West Main. The Boylan Heights and the, those little restaurants that are right there.
Mhm.
And not, yeah,
So I think that makes sense.
Yeah, just
but
turn
not the
into West
corner.
Main.
but should it be the corner?
That's,
yeah, I
They
think
kind of
it is
feel of
the
the corner.
Yeah.
I feel like until you get to the top of the hill, I feel like you're still in the corner of the district.
Even though they're on 14th Street, it still kind of feels,
Cut it off at the Graduate.
That's right, yeah.
I agree.
Like, I would,
Put the corner down. Why is,
No.
yeah,
like,
right,
these.
make it the corner.
right, all the way down to JPA.
But here.
You just said that, right?
James is
Somebody
saying
did,
that.
James, yeah,
in West Main,
I agree,
13th Street be the boundary?
That makes sense.
yeah.
Yeah.
Wurtenbacher here.
Well, that stays Wordland.
Yeah, I know. But just for reference.
Yeah.
So you would include the,
Graduate,
Would you include the church,
Yeah.
church in West Main?
I
or-
think that, yeah, maybe we should just extend the corner.
It's 213.
it's all right. To
Where do
me,
you
it's-
bring the line
it's-
back?
To me, it's also topography, right? Like West Main is flat.
Right.
The corner is a big dip down hillside both ways, 14th Street and the train tracks.
I guess I'm thinking when we're describing the buildings though, like I'd lump, the Graduate in with, West
I
Main.
agree with that.
And
Hmm.
maybe
Yeah.
the dividing line is, so that dividing line between 14th and Portland, just take that south. And then take the,
13th and
Portland Street becomes the border between, the corner and 14th.
Well, these are part of work.
Right,
Yeah.
but, get a lot of people out there.
On
Yes.
Portland West.
No.
We need pointers.
Stretch
Where's the
all the way
pointers?
We need pointers, so we need to get, there's too many chairs in here.
Straight west. Like down by where.
Here?
The corner extends out.
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
I can get behind that.
I would,
This stays West Main, that stays West.
I would agree with that.
I can get behind that. Because the Graduate Hotel is kind of at the crest of
This is
the
a big picture. You guys-
I'm shocked that y'all didn't preserve it as the Hojos. Howard Johnson.
I remember when it was a Howard Johnson.
I do too.
I remember
when
Red
there was a
Roof.
movie theater down there.
I remember Red Roof.
indeed.
So what you said was,
So draw, pretend there's a line running down the center of Portland Street, and just go due west with that.
Yeah,
Right.
Like where St. Martin's used to be or whatever.
So Wurtland comes to there, the corner comes to here,
Yes.
Yeah, there you go.
and west, and this is the boundary, West Main still does this.
Okay.
So the corner just flows
So-
past the railroad tracks by block.
Right, and it's really those, I think kind of part of the definition is that the corner is largely like commercial resident, or, and restaurants.
Student stuff,
right?
yeah.
And there's like the fig.
It's an effort to get
roots
the
or whatever
boiling in the
it's
corner.
little- There's kind of slip shop feel, and same as the zigzag building.
These zigzag buildings.
There's so many little things. There's never been like a primary tenant of that building in my mind. Like,
The Phoenix in the 80s.
What was the bar that was
Nice.
there? Is it
Saint-
still there?
Saint Martin's.
Is it still there?
That
No,
was-
okay.
It's like the
they brought
kitchen
it back
for
for a
roots
second,
or
but
something.
now it's the catering kitchen for Roots.
Interesting.
Very unfortunate.
No windows in that
It's
bar.
unfortunate, all those engineering students that threw all that money at reviving it.
Little John's is coming
John's
back
come
though.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see if it's as good. So, I doubt they're gonna get Frank to come work there.
Okay, we solved the
Okay,
problem.
so.
Yeah, who memorialized that?
I think I
Jeff.
did, but I'm,
Jeff did.
So I guess I'm also wondering if, Jeff, do we need to like solve all of our guideline rewrites and turn them all in at once, or can we do this in parts?
I think you certainly, I think that,
You know,
I mean, you all, sorry.
And let me, before you answer, let me ask this. If we were to vote on an update, I do think it makes sense to do it like by district or something, but if we were to vote on an update to a district, does it then go to council for approval?
So the last time, the last revisions to the design guidelines were in 2014 when you updated West Main and also made some changes to tents and things on the mall. So you can piecemeal it. I think it would be wisest to at least try to tidy up chapter 1 and then, you know, we look through the others. I think just because things are just, there's a lot happening, and while we've got council's attention, let's try to be as complete as we can. And you remember my goal, I think, had been, you know, by the end of the summer we were able to have, you know, a draft ready. You know, maybe it's to say by the end of the summer we have chapter 1 ready, and possibly some specific recommendations that, you know, are foreseeable. Remember, we don't have to rewrite these whole things. We just have to review and update them, and that, you know, could be just doing grammatical checks. But I think the key is to get chapter 1 cleaned up, 2, to go through and say what are the conflicts that we see coming, and let's have some, you know, scenarios thought through. And then the rest of them, that's where I was really thinking, I just get someone to edit it really good and cover the bases. And if we gave ourselves a 6 months calendar to do those, I mean, no, it's like, yeah, but it does come down to, yeah, can we commit to, you know, every meeting after, you know, and we can, you know, should wrap up here next 10 minutes and just say every meeting, we're going to take an hour and do this. I don't foresee a lot of things coming next month. I don't know why things continue to be slow, but
Sure.
and so I just need to send it back out, the assignments again, say, hey, everybody, here are your teams, here are your groups. Even if you do it individually and, you know, we can have, you know,
Are we doing
dual
it teams
inversions.
or individually? Because I'm confused.
Send out what you had before, and then, you know, we'll figure it out among ourselves. Because it may be
Everybody-
where some of these things are
everybody
so
picked a region,
big, you split it up.
Yeah,
Like subgroups.
everybody had a region before, right?
Mhm.
So-
And really just say, you know, I'm going to commit 90 minutes to this, you know, and it's you know, I don't want this to be a, you know, something where you have to take off a week's worth of work and, you know, drink a lot of Mountain Dew to get it done.
We can do that. In some ways, having a 6-month deadline isn't helpful because it's sort of like. you think,
I know, but I need to, I'm having a meeting, Friday, you know, he said, I mean, look, in City Hall, we're all still trying to figure out what this ordinance is gonna do, so everybody gets it, but there are, I do have some funds to spend. I don't have a tremendous amount, but I have some funds to spend. I want to spend them wisely. And I
Spend
think,
on pizza.
yeah, pizza, yeah. Yeah.
Set up a prize system for
I think
who
we were in a
says
Kettle
you've
and
gone
Pub.
first.
And then,
Well, then I win.
yeah,
Really
Ron
fun.
went to pizza.
Yeah.
And so I just said, and I think, to go to
I think we should.
look at each of these like we did with Gordon Avenue today and say, all right, if something came in, what would I say is important? What would I see, and then, live from New York. No, by the way, the mall is on the National Register now as individual listed. The National Park Service approved the listing 2 weeks ago, so a nice victory for the city. And then, but
I will make an exception.
Oh, see?
yeah, there's some, and
I
it's
still
interesting.
think it's a living landscape
There's a
that,
chink in the armor.
that can change as opposed to have to be preserved exactly to Halpert's plan, but that's.
And I think, that's acknowledged. I mean, that it was planned as a three-dimensional space, and that, for example, the bricks have been replaced, but that's space, that intent of that space is still much held on to. Obviously, a lot of discussion about cafe spaces, but I'll leave that to the politicians. But thank you all for your time. Anything going on I need to know about, any exciting, please get your 1 hour of training out of the way so I don't have to a year from now. Just
I emailed you.
I did, Uncle Calder did say he'd be happy to come talk to all of us and give us all a presentation of the count for all of our training.
Who did?
Calder Love, it'd be great. Yeah, let's do that.
Wow.
So,
we've had.
Maybe we can hire him to do this. Sorry.
he's retired.
So I just have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So did we finish reviewing Rugby Road University?
No.
We just kind of fizzled, and here's this great work of art that Tyler's
I
done.
think we're all happy
I
with
thought we were just going to kind of march through the sub areas and look at them and just any comment, and it seems like we didn't get stuck on University Circle.
You guys are gonna kill me. The night is still fairly young for one of our meetings. We could do that. I mean, I read through it pretty
Yeah,
quickly
no.
and was fairly content with,
Right.
But I didn't drive through the district either. Did anybody? To be able to.
No, just sort of know them in our head.
That's what I was thinking. Like, for me, it would be most efficient just to kind of read it on my own while I'm driving through, or biking through. And
while you're pulled to the side of the road and you stop and you read.
Well,
Sorry.
well, that's the hard part is if you're driving, but if you're out on a bike or you're walking, then you see more.
Yeah.
And the car is always a problem because somebody's behind you and you're the person who's gawking at,
it's more of a process. I'm thinking it's probably more of a process of adding on, just seeing things that somebody else may have missed, or
Yeah.
finding what you think
I
is
mean-
important, so adding to it.
Or we can just take the easy way and just go, oh, Tyler's work is great, and then pass that. But I think all of us want to be a little bit more thorough.
For me, it would be more instructive to actually walk through with Tyler's things in hand rather than this little fly-through here, which I think is a little bit awkward.
Yeah,
and
I
takes a
agree.
long time.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can't see through the trees on the Google Maps.
Ron
will
just sent us
mention
this draft. Thank you, Ron.
The three properties we didn't look at on the potential add to contributing, I did a quick Google search, and they look much more interesting than the three that we did look at.
Can we look at them real quick?
So I feel like it might be worth taking a peek. One of them.
1605 is a glass block right
Yeah,
next to
it's
the
right next
one
to
we
the
looked at
saw
today.
tonight, but it is an interesting building.
I like it.
Um,
It's only
Can we look at it?
It's
1977.
1950, so.
Fred Wolf, I think, said that was his first project in town.
Really?
What is
think
it?
so.
Can we look at it?
At what point does that become?
Can we do Google Earth on that?
So my struggle is, are we really going to tell someone they can't demolish it?
I think the question is,
We have to get
are
them.
we gonna be in a position to tell them they can't?
Oh, I mean, right now, no, but if we make it contributing, that puts us in that
That's what I'm
position.
saying.
And I guess what my point is, and why I want to knock a bunch of contributing buildings off of North Downtown, or not North Downtown, off of the Market Street District, was I cannot see myself
Come on.
denying a demolition for one of those buildings. So, like the first three that we looked at here, they're nice. I can't see myself saying, no, you can't knock that house down.
But I did a quick Google search. I think the next three are worth
Okay.
taking a peek at.
But what if it's like, you know, WG's house behind,
It,
Zotos, you know, I mean?
I had this argument with the, what was the cubic house on First Street, that a local professor did, that I always forget his name.
Bob Vickery's house?
Yes.
Vickery.
Sorry, I should know that. I should have known that.
That should stay.
The gangplank.
But that was a 1980s house. I personally can't say that we,
I think it's
so that's where
significant.
I struggle with that.
I think it's really compatible
I
with the
would fight
district.
to keep a house like that, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's gonna
Put
be.
it this way, if my house is in the district
Yeah.
and contributing, his house is in
Yeah,
the district and
exactly.
contributing.
I think it's of its time.
Is that the house?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm curious why that's not contributing.
I saw a date of 1949 somewhere, but I can't find that now.
It's right here,
Look at details.
1946.
That was right after the war. That's
It's
pretty
pre-1950, Carl.
No, I know that. So I'm a little,
I vote yes.
Is it the only
I'd like to know what
non-contributing on
happened to it,
Preston
like-
Circle?
No, I think,
Or someplace?
I think 6, I'm not sure.
I have the map.
Yeah.
do you have the survey? Because I'm curious if it,
Yes, it's the only structure, according to my map, that's not contributing in that little
Really?
circle.
632 is?
but do you have the,
Which one is
632 is the one in back of, anyway.
this one?
It's the,
That's odd.
yeah, why is the center left out?
So the
630.
problem is
sorry, it's the, right there, yeah.
Molly wasn't
that is
able to
contributing?
finish.
It's my sorority house.
And
It's not that old. I mean, it's not,
one more thing on my list.
So these are listed as contributing.
So,
but the one next to it is not? The one, 635, I think, to the, no, to the whatever, west or whatever.
Oh, in the
north.
back?
No, the other way.
This is 626.
Oh, 626, okay. Oh, then
Right there, 66.
Is there any room in all these descriptions to point out significantly, like, great things? You know, like, like the Preston Court is such a great building, you know, I mean,
Yeah.
just to note it, like, note it.
Yeah.
Is it individually protected?
It's on the National Register.
So the National
There's,
Register, but doesn't, being
There
an
you go.
IPP, yeah. Now,
there's
being-
plaques all around that site.
Yeah, yeah. so-
Tyler, do you have the historic survey for 626?
It links to 630.
Interesting.
It links to something next door.
Because I'm curious if there was some reason that it got
Well,
left off.
Here's why, Tyler, some of those, the
It links to
addresses in the
624.
survey are old addresses. That's another one of the big headaches Molly was tackling. A lot of the addresses get changed. And so the old 1980 survey, the house numbers are just off.
Well, it seems that there is still a 624, but the landmark survey for both the lots on 624 and 626 linked to a 624 survey.
I also have a spreadsheet of comments over the years when the BAR actually would investigate adding buildings, and sometimes the note says, you know, owner not interested, something like that. So sometimes there are more circumstances why something was left out. But I think to the question of unique buildings and unique smaller spaces, that's where a sub-area can be, you know, broken down further. I mean, like, you know, tonight with Park Street, to sort of talk about the length of Park Street as informing what Kevin Riddle's new building should look like, you know, it doesn't make
I
sense.
vote for 626.
What's that? Oh, 626?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. can't believe it's the only one there that's not. It's weird.
That's why I'm just curious if there was some reason.
I suspect,
I was looking at the ownership. I didn't notice.
Altered or
Are the houses on either side of it of the same era, or are they?
They're 30s and 20s.
Okay.
It's a funny little loop.
It might be as simple as
yeah.
that, but this is just a little more new when they made that distinction.
I think it works as an Airbnb now, doesn't it?
probably all do back there.
I took a ride along with Craig Fabio the other day, and he showed me a shed in someone's backyard that's being used as an Airbnb. So who knows? You know, all kinds of stuff out there.
So the notable house on the Preston Place Loop is the Windhurst. It was the original farmhouse that the whole neighborhood got subdivided from.
Which one is that?
It's from 1857. It's not in great shape, and it's also, it's behind Preston,
Right there.
what Preston Place is what that building is? That it's,
Right there.
Right there.
it
It
doesn't
used to-
have any street presence because the front door is like,
That was the farmhouse for the entire neighborhood.
it seems like it's been under renovation for a long time.
It's,
It
yeah.
has.
And then this
Yes,
is
it
the
has.
cookhouse.
Came before us too.
Yeah, a lot of the little houses on that
That
street
house
aren't that remarkable. They're
was
just old.
That was
supposedly a
old.
slave's quarter.
Yeah. That
Yeah,
one's
it was
really
the,
old.
this predates Windhurst.
Yeah.
That's something worth keeping.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That one, the little one
Uh-huh.
predates it.
Yeah.
Is it a
It was the
single-family house?
cookhouse.
Yeah.
It's associated with the Windhurst plantation or Windhurst property. But that was, yeah, that predates the 1850s house to the left.
So I found that this whole neighborhood was the rugby farm or rugby plantation in Windhurst. I haven't found anything about what that farmhouse was on the rugby property.
I could show you, there's, it's one of those houses that's kind of hidden and you see that it's there, you're like, oh my God, how, you don't know about it.
Is it further down Rugby that's not in,
And down the hill
not
towards
in the,
that.
not in the ADC?
Well, there's another weird one at 805 Cabell that faces the wrong way that I always wondered about. I don't think that's in the district.
Why I think it's an IPP, but, this is just-
805 Cabell.
Yeah.
The first, the 600s on Cabell are in the Preston Place
Yeah,
sub-area.
this is out of the district,
Mhm.
but it's another one that I think was part of a bigger farm. Oh, well.
I think the house you're asking about is, now those are the houses in Cottage Lane.
So those are IPPs?
Man, my
That wasn't
thing
the
is
one you're talking about. though.
misbehaving.
Cabell.
Oh, there's a weirdly oriented one.
Can we look at the other houses on Gordon Ave? I'm sort of curious,
Oh, that thing.
especially with that.
One of them is a crazy fraternity house that is originally from 1902.
Now, just, sometimes, anytime you see a 1920 date, throw it out. That's a default date for, and because some of these areas weren't annexed, until after, I'd have to look at, but when the county, or when the city would annex and assume the real estate, and it would just, didn't know when something was built, it just put 1920. So that's a default date, it's not always accurate. I'm sorry, you were saying, Gordon Avenue?
1702.
1605.
I am curious about 1702 as to what
So there's,
caused them to leave
It's
it
a
out.
funky house. It looks like it's been added on to.
it has been. In fact, the contributing structure piece.
Just type it in, Jeff.
I'm gonna look at this map. No, 'cause
I'm trying to pull up this.
more fun.
yeah, more fun.
Sure. All right, we're gonna get.
I don't think there's a cert.
We're all gonna drive around.
Which one is 1702?
On the corner.
That corner. Nope.
No, the other corner.
Yep.
Nope.
No.
17.
Yep,
You're
that one.
17.
Yes, that one.
17. All right, you only got one more corner to go the other way.
No, he had it. It's the left side of 17th Street, south of
Yep.
Gordon.
17th and Gordon. Oh,
Or just turn
back on
around.
the
It's,
street.
nobody's good. Turn around. You're
yeah,
right there.
no, go.
You were there.
That one. That one. That one. That one.
Gordon.
To the right. That
Right.
thing.
Yeah.
It's a sorority house.
That's it.
I think it's a fraternity.
It's,
It's
yeah,
a
that's-
fraternity house.
women wouldn't live in that building.
What's with the big?
Look at that.
Yes.
The kitchen.
Kitchen vent.
But it's listed as 1902.
I believe it.
I believe it. It's always been really old. Sorry. Sorry, that's my profound thinking of this.
It was sold in 1902.
When it was built. But it is real stucco, not feces. No, I always walked by this undergraduate and I thought, that's really decrepit.
To date. Maybe it was in the city property records.
No, I wouldn't make a strong argument for adding it at this point.
And then the 1605 is just a little bit further down and is it's like exposed CMU and glass block.
You
No,
know,
that's the glass block one, okay.
It's cool. I've always liked that one.
Though
1702 is not contributing?
it's not. And
Really?
I feel
That's
like,
weird.
so,
No,
I mean, I
that
guess
should
the
be.
I
question
mean, look at that,
becomes.
look at those porches.
Right. A
Ooh,
question
look at
becomes,
that
if that were torn
window.
down, would the neighborhood suffer?
Well,
Is
I
that
get-
like a little bit of a mansard roof there too?
It's got a whole bunch of, yeah.
Outdoor porch, that's just kind of cool up there.
That's
Yeah.
where I'd love to know what the historic survey says, because this has to have some reason why they left it off, unless someone just thought it was too ugly. But
Unless the owner wanted it left off at the time.
Yeah, some of these additions might
Well.
be really old. They might have butchered this a long time ago.
Yeah,
there's
it's
a
not,
gutter on the front.
yeah, and again, yeah, could have been a, now, and sometimes you look at those old surveys and it'll say this building's in
Front door,
horrible
gutter coming
shape.
off the porch.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just,
I like it. Just basic.
a downspout.
Dr. Seuss. Yeah.
I
and
think,
that little balcony,
I know.
whatever you wanna call it, is,
Queen Anne roof.
I'll vote yeah, this
no,
one on.
up above that.
Yeah, up above it was probably a little, they filled it in, right?
Yeah, probably like 3 or 4 additions onto it.
Balcony at one
That
point.
might not be-
I'd like to see that. Can you go around the back? I want to see what the,
yep, give me a second.
Here we go.
Yeah, the city's website will not let me into their surveys. So there are too many users on the website at the moment.
Me and Jeff.
I know, I'm a little annoyed.
We got 2 people in there.
So there it is in 1920, that's, oh, shoot, I got the,
I can't.
walk me around the back. Thank you.
Well,
Is that the back of it?
They won't let us go around to the back. No, this is just the
Oh,
other
okay.
corner.
so that's,
I can show you from the air.
I think it's been buggered up a little bit.
There you go. Little bay window there. I have no idea what's going on. This little Google distortion.
It's definitely been added onto. That puppy's
But additions can be removed.
had more work than Kim
Yeah.
Kardashian.
I feel like that's a contributor.
That qualifies.
I think it's pretty cool. I think I agree with Dave.
Man,
I like all the covered doors. Oh, look at that bay window there too. Yep. Look at that.
When we voted in, we can just say, this house has always been old.
Even when Sherry was in swing. Sorry.
Which is so long ago.
Does anyone know the history of this University Court address? There's like 7 houses that like
Yeah.
face each other on a sidewalk.
Yes.
What's the history?
Oh, I don't know.
It's
Just
Oh.
these down here,
know what you're talking about.
That house that's
I
got the
I'm
IPP
kinda
around it
curious,
is
too.
1890. It's really, it's like one of the first houses that got built.
Yeah.
The,
The one that has the red
the one
around
with
it?
the red around it's like 1890.
Can we look at,
It's a sorority house now. It's like
oh,
a
it's Tri-Sig.
old Victorian.
Yeah, I think.
But all those houses face that little sidewalk.
Say the house, it's,
Well, there's the house that, which way is that facing? Not the street.
this is a house that's
Okay, that's facing.
pretty
17th
extraordinary,
Street.
but
That's the gingerbread house.
Is that even in a district?
There you go.
Yeah.
Is it-
Hopefully.
but the railings have,
Guys.
it's been,
cool. That's cool. A little side street. You can
Mhm.
never walk down there.
the guy changed the railings, and I said, those railings have changed every
Yeah, it's-
10 years
it's-
for,
We have
Cool.
but yeah,
used
there's
this
some
as an
really neat.
example
So
so
to
many
me,
times
you
when
know, that's
we
some
zoning
really,
code.
they've got some cool stuff.
Of a good
It's contributing.
common space.
More like
Common
a
space.
a form of neighborhood that we like to allow.
Yeah.
Nice little sense of community.
Okay, so
Yeah.
come
But
up
they
here to-
work legally because this is technically a street.
You know, we're just,
Where was that gray house?
that's right at the bottom of, across the street from the Zigzaggy building.
That is like 214th Street, I think is the address.
Yeah.
Look at that little house, gosh.
They're just really,
It's always been one of my favorites.
okay, so. I'm
How'd you
trying to
like
get
to
to
be
the house
captured
Sherry
on
just mentioned.
Running.
The topography really makes 14th Street feel disconnected, kind of. And a lot of those ones are not
That's where
remarkable
I
that are
lived my fourth year, that one on the left.
in there.
That's fine.
You're just walking through.
You're
my-
almost there, Jeff.
You went from the purple house out of that?
I was in the purple house. It's in my sorority house.
I don't think, I don't think it'll let you turn left.
Oh, are you
Zoom your camera to the left.
talking about the other side of 14th?
Yeah,
Is it
there's-
stuck? Oh, yes.
I'm
Okay.
going in a circle here.
Wait,
You
why,
Just
why are you going?
Ow, 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 no, back.
All right, 14th Street, I'm going, what's back?
They
here?
wanted to look at the little cluster of houses that
Right.
front on the sidewalk.
And look at this one right
Right.
here.
No, turn all the way 180
Keep
degrees.
doing what you're doing.
There you go, those houses.
Go up just a
block.
tad,
And
and
then,
now turn left. There's a
And
little
look at the
sidewalk
court.
there.
You can't walk up it on Google.
Oh, no, you're,
I know, it's,
why are you going?
Didn't,
That's Virginia Ave.
They're-
You're talking about.
they're asking,
Talking about
The
the
house
University
is-
Court.
Yes,
doesn't-
University Court.
Doesn't Google Street View need to have a car be able to go through there for it to be recorded?
They do
Yeah.
drive people around with, or you can walk a camera down in some
Okay.
places.
That's interesting, it really is like the whole.
Look at
Jeff,
how
you,
old that White
Jeff,
House
you
is.
said you knew the history of University Court?
I. See if I can get to that. It's really odd because where,
this clapboard one looks
Is it-
old.
is it these?
yes.
That's the back of
They
them.
all face a little
Yeah.
sidewalk, like they all, they don't,
You were there for a second
know.
and then you turned around.
I'm gonna steal your mouse in a minute.
It's right where,
All right,
right
now
there,
don't
right there,
move,
that's
don't,
it, that's
don't
it.
move.
No,
There.
that's it, yes,
Yes.
yes, yes. So is that the very old one, Tyler? Do you remember when Jeff at the beginning of the evening said, I don't want to drive? This is
I
why.
don't want to be driving. I had a lot of candy today,
Yeah,
remember?
so
He's like, Dad.
the Victorian kind of gray one in the
Yes,
back is
that's
the
the old one.
oldest one. And then they built all these facing each other.
That one's Tri-Sig, that's a sorority. But yeah.
Remember that, where do you think that?
Jeff, you said you knew the history.
There's a way to go up the sidewalk.
I'll have to, it's buried somewhere, but yeah, there's, sometimes you can piece things together with Sanborns. And there's ways to, the city tax, the city assessor has a file card on every property,
Mhm.
which is invaluable piece of information. But you can't like just walk in and go through it. So that was another thing Molly and I were working on, like trying to figure out how to scan all those.
Poor one on the right never got a front porch.
Yeah.
So what led us to this? I'm just curious. Are these all?
Well, there's-
They're contributing.
If you saw it in aerial, it's like a,
It's just neat.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
this row.
But there's no question here.
No, no, we're just wasting time.
Yeah.
Just wanted to be clear.
I was asking
Okay,
if anyone
so-
knew the history on
Is
it.
it time to have an adjournment?
I think it is. I said 8:15.
May I move, so move?
So did we have any consensus along the two Gordon Avenue ones?
Sorority or fraternity house?
Did we
think-
vote yes on the
1702,
Dr. Seuss 1702?
I would support
I'd
adding
support it,
that as a contributing
because it's been
structure.
really, really old for a long time.
Yeah, what I took from this is that some research on the survey, some research on their origin, architect origin,
And then,
and then I could get back to you with some information on that. And that my takeaway is that we're really looking at extraordinary, or we really want to consider extraordinary first. And I think that that's some homework I can do on my side. But I don't think you need to reach consensus on any of these.
1605.
But I think that
That's
we
not
should,
77, is it?
Yeah.
should
what it's
we
listed
focus
as.
your search,
Really?
though? You don't need to research all
I
of
think it
these.
was renovated.
I was going to,
Fred Wolf really, I swear
Was
he
it
said.
tomorrow
Fred
night
I
ask
swear he
Richard
said
Guy
one of his
Wilson,
first
like,
projects.
of
Okay.
local prominent architects
Yeah.
and
77.
examples.
Has he been practicing that long?
He's not that, no.
But
No,
on
no,
this
no.
list, I think 1702
No,
Gordon,
he would have,
we're leaning towards
graduated from
yes.
graduate school at the earliest in the early 90s,
perhaps
mid-90s.
626 Preston.
He's a little bit younger than I am.
I could have sworn he said that.
70s or 80s.
Yeah.
So whoever,
no.
we had a presentation on that because they
I'll
came
bet
to
they
us to,
renovated it. I thought so too.
they came to us to make it gray. It used to be pink block. And
I heard
somebody
a
told
motion
us
to
it was
adjourn. Is there a
their
second?
grad school project.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you for your leadership, James.
Thank you, everyone, for your time this evening.
Thank you.